Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. Hey, what's up, guys? It's Scott Groves on the Edge podcast. We are here with G Russell Reynolds, and you're going to find out what the G is for a little bit later. Because like everything else in his life, Russell here has a story for everything. I feel like he's the Caucasian most interesting man in the world. Let's see. Born in Miami, relocated to Texas, high school in Israel, back to Texas, moved to California, of course, to be an actor like everybody else. Lover of mixed martial arts, currently does a men's health and wellness group, runs corporate health and wellness groups, was an actor for a while, reformed, right?
Yeah.
Reformed actor.
Recovering actor.
Recovering actor.
No 12-step should be.
Yeah, 12-step program. I know a lot of actors that should be in a 12-step program, whether it's for acting or something else. So let's just start at the origin story. Miami to Texas to Israel. How does that happen for a blue-eyed white guy and ended up in California?
Right? Born in Miami. Parents moved to Texas before I was even a year old. So that's why I say I'm a Texan with a Miami flair. And, grew up in Texas till I was 16. And then my stepdad, both my parents are really good at getting married.
Not so much at staying, huh?
Not so much. Yeah. Dad 5 times, I think, mom 3. So stepdad number 2 worked for a company called General Dynamics, which is now Lockheed Martin. They were building the F-16 fighter jet for the Israeli military. So we had a contract over there. And he's like, we can put you kids up to stay here in Texas. I'm like, screw that. No, let's go. Chance for travel abroad. We're out. So went to an American international school in Israel. Some 70 countries represented there. Pretty cool. Mostly diplomats, kids, and so on and so forth. And did that for a while. Actually, more to the story. Quit high school my 11th year because I was bored. I just, round peg, square hole, just didn't. And it's not, not that I couldn't do it. Just didn't motivate me. So then moved to a spiritual community in Scotland and lived there for a year. So
you went full hippie. You went
oh yeah.
Because I'm guessing a diplomatic school in Israel is pretty military run, a little bit more of that private school feel. I'm guessing it's not a real hippie vibe there.
It wasn't. No, it's pretty open. They were, like I said, diplomats, kids, ambassadors, stuff like that. So you had a real mix of cultures and kids and stuff like that. So it wasn't super militant. It's not like West Point or something like that. My mom and I had kind of begun our spiritual path together in this life. We went to, when I was a kid, went to Unity Church, which is like a non-denominational New Age Christian church. And I was like, cool. And there's a book there in the bookshop we found called The Magic of Findhorn. So here's this place in Scotland, right? The story is there's a group of friends that are out of work. This is late 60s, early 70s, living in a trailer park in northern Scotland, pretty barren. And it's the spiritual revolution at that time, right? So everybody's meditating and stuff. It's cool. One of the guys says that in his meditations, he starts communicating with the plant divas and nature spirits. And the other guys are like, cool, Peter, whatever, man.
Whatever. What did you smoke last night?
Yeah, whatever. But they start telling him how to grow the garden. Everyone's like, okay, sure, we'll go along with that. Well, when they start following the directives of the nature spirits, suddenly they've got 40-pound cabbages, carrots that are 3 feet long, roses blooming in the middle of a Scottish blizzard. And they're like, what the hell? So they got a lot of attention for that.
Wait, is this a real thing or is this some dude's story after he did DMT?
Real thing, dude. I saw it.
All right, wait, the magic of Findhorn?
Findhorn, F as in Frank, INDHORN.
Okay, I'm looking this up right after the podcast. I want to see the 60-inch carrot or whatever it is.
That's 6-inch. That's the white guy.
Okay. This is the 60-inch carrot. Okay, I want to check this bad boy out.
Yeah, it's but it was crazy. So late 80s was when I was just really discontent with high school, and Mom and I had always wanted to go check that place out. So as a family vacation for that summer, we went, spent a couple of weeks in London and then up to Scotland. And after 2 weeks at this spiritual community, my parents in their grace and mercy said, we know you're not digging school, so you can either come back, finish school anyway, go to college, do everything you're supposed to do, which really didn't fit for me. Because when I graduated 11th grade, I asked my peers, I'm like, what are you going to do after high school. And they're like, well, go to college. I'm like, well, which college? And some of them knew. I'm like, what are you going to study? Less of them knew. What are you going to do after that? Nobody fucking knew.
Right.
So I'm like, no, that doesn't work for me. I'm like, why are you doing it? And they're like, because we're supposed to. I'm like, not a sheep waiting to be prodded by my shepherd. Not the way I'm going to roll. So I kind of wanted to strike out on my own path. So parents said, you can come back to school and finish and do all that, or you can stay here and make this your school. And I'm like, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. And
of course, there was a hippie commune in Scotland just ready to take you in.
Right?
Perfect.
Now, here's where it gets cool. If you're familiar with Shakespeare's Macbeth, the Scottish play, Cotter Castle, where Macbeth took place, was 20 minutes up the road. The three witches on the hill, Bubble, Bubble, Toil, and Trouble, I lived on that hill. It's called Clooney Hill. It's a real freaking place. And the whole area is steeped in the history of witchcraft. There was actually a marker at the bottom of the hill where the last witch was killed in the trials. They put her in a barrel full of spikes and rolled her down the hill. If she was alive at the bottom, she was a witch.
Oh, I'm guessing she didn't make it.
Yeah, I'm like, did you guys really think this through?
It's like something straight out of Monty Python, right?
Yeah.
If she floats like a duck.
Right.
Oh, she burns like wood.
Yeah. How do you know she's a witch? She turned me into a newt, she did. I mean, well, I got better.
I got better. So good. There's so many people under 40 right now that have no clue what the fuck we're talking about. So please go watch Monty Python's Search for the Holy Grail.
It's a must.
All right. So what is that like? You stay in Scotland with this hippie commune. Was there like an educational format, or did you just get naked and run through the jungle or through the forest? That
was only a couple times.
Okay.
Yeah, no, there was a whole. By the time I got there, they said they'd gone from growing plants to growing people, so it became a hub of New Age spirituality. Dr. Wayne Dyer would go and speak there, and a lot of the big names in personal development and spirituality. So that was kind of their thing, and it was really, really cool experience. And they still had the commune aspect where, they're living in harmony with nature and self-sustaining and all that stuff. So it was a really cool experience. And while I was there, I met a woman who I was convinced was my soulmate. And it's funny, I remember talking to a friend who was back in Texas. He's like, I get that y'all are in love, but why you call her your cellmate? I'm like, no, soul. Never mind. So I was 18. She was 32.
Yes. So you were her soulmate.
She taught me a lot and appreciated the stamina of youth. We'll say that. And so I was convinced that this is the one. So she was from Canada. And so then left Scotland, went back to Israel, told the parents my latest crazy adventure, and off to Canada. And
this is the 80s, right?
Yeah.
So this is the 80s. Like in my I think something like that sounds so cool. I'm like, oh, what an experience. But also in my mind, I'm like, oh, all of those ends like Jonestown, right? Like you drink the Kool-Aid, or somebody shoots you down, or everybody kills themselves before the moon, planet, alignment, star, spaceship gets there.
Wasn't that kind of a commune?
Okay.
Yeah,
so
luckily.
So you tell your parents, hey, I met this 32-year-old woman who's teaching me a lot. We're going to move back to Canada together. And they're like, all right, enjoy yourself.
Oh, there's even more. She was a witch.
Oh, perfect.
So, yeah, because why not add that to the story?
Perfect.
Yeah, so parents are like, what have we done? Why didn't we make him go back to school?
Yeah, because at that point, it's kind of their own fault, right? They let you stay in a hippie commune. Of course, you're going to fall in love with a witch who's twice your age.
Yeah, it's like Chris Rock says, as a dad, your only job is to make sure your daughter doesn't wear clear heels.
Right.
Yeah, they made the mistakes.
They failed, so it's fine. All right, so did you get to Canada, or did you guys break up in transit?
No, I did. I got to Canada, and I was so young and naive. I had no ideas of the ways of the world. Like, I literally showed up at the airport with a one-way ticket, no money, and like, I didn't know what I didn't know. So, I have to go through customs. I didn't know that. And they're like, well, how long are you staying? I'm like, as long as I can. Like, what are you going to do for money? I'm like, I'll get a job or something. You can't do that, right? I'm like, no. What do you mean you can't do that? You don't understand. I'm in love.
There's some Canadian Mountie being like, her, you, which, what's going on?
Yeah. So the funny part is, as they're about to turn me away, and they call her into the office, and I just see her shaking her head like, oh dear God, he said what? And all of a sudden their computer systems go down. The whole thing goes down.
Of course, she's a witch.
Because she's a witch, right?
She crashed the computer systems.
And they're like, okay, I don't know, if it was her or what, but Yeah.
So the computer
like,
systems
all
go
right,
down.
6 months tourist visa, get the hell out of our site. And I'm like, okay, thank you. So I got 6 months and then had to leave, go back. We did a dance back and forth, went back to Israel. Then
By the way, just real quick, post 9/11, this doesn't happen.
None of
The
it happens.
the computers go down. You're stuck in a Canadian airport for about 6 months because they think you're up to no good or something like that.
There's a cavity search involved at that point.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So wait a minute, let's go back. I'm just thinking, my parents, my dad didn't talk to me for 6 months when I was in high school and I signed up for the Army. I was supposed to be the first Grove child that went to college, and I was going to be a lawyer because I'm sure at 5 years old I said I want to be a lawyer. I was really good at arguing with my mom, so they also had in their mind like, Scott's going to go to college, even though we're not telling him how to go to college. He's going to pay for college, even though we've never talked about how to pay for college. He's going to get a law degree, even though I didn't know a single fucking lawyer. And then he's going to make us proud. And so when I was like, no, I think what I'll do is I'll sign up for the Army and go blow stuff up. My dad didn't talk to me. Maybe it was 6 months, maybe it was 6 weeks. I don't know. But when you're a kid, it was brutal. And I remember one day we were sitting there and we were watching TV, still not talking to each other, and some military recruitment commercial came on. You know, just total tearjerker, serve your country. And he turned to me, he's like, I'm really proud that you're doing what you're doing, but I also feel like you should have gone to college. And then we never talked about it again. But they thought they really fucked up. Your parents, you're in Israel, you're hard charging, you're getting an international kind of education, and then you go live at a commune and now they think you're going to marry a witch. You end up in Canada. The computer system goes out. Yeah. Like, you really didn't think this through at all as far as like, how am I going to make money? Or did she have a house, or was she going to just pay your way?
Yeah, she rented a space. I put no thought into it. I was just, it's like the image of the fool walking off the cliff, but somehow he makes it and everything's okay. That was me. I was that guy.
Awesome. All right. So tell us what it's like to live in Canada in the 80s before they all hated Americans. Or did they hate Americans back then?
No, they didn't hate them. They mocked them.
Oh, okay.
So, which they still do.
Yeah, totally.
I remember when I was there, they came out with the gold loon coin as their dollar coin, right? And when that first came out, I was in Victoria over in British Columbia on Vancouver Island, and there was a number of people that would actually sell those to American tourists for $3 as the little chocolates, but they were trick chocolates that you can't get them open, so they could take them back to their friends, and they'd never figure out how to do it. And they bought them.
Wow. I do think it's kind of funny that the Canadian dollar is called the loon.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So
how long were you in Canada? How does this relationship end fantastically? You guys have 5 kids together. You're still together?
Yeah, not so much.
Yeah, not so much.
Yeah. I was there for 6 months, and then had to go back to Israel, and then Texas. Family moved back to Texas. We did the long distance relationship for a while, and then I'm like, look, I want to be with you. So you're moving to Texas or I'm moving to Canada. She's like, I'm not moving. I'm like, I'm on my way. Sold everything I had, bought a used van, like one of those old Good Times vans.
Yeah.
And I was going to drive. Made it as far as New Mexico before the van broke down. It turns out somebody had filled the radiator with newspaper. Why do that? I have no idea. I ended up this little hick town, literally tumbleweeds blowing across the street. Only mechanic in town. I'm like, how much is this going to cost? And he told me, I'm like, that's robbery, man. I'm going to talk to the police. He goes, I am the police. This is my day job. I'm like, shit. Hey, Mom, Dad, I need to borrow some more money.
Nice.
So, yeah. And then I'd left on a Monday. I'd given myself till Friday to get to Vancouver. And by Wednesday, the van was fixed. So now I've got 2 days. So no-dos and willpower. I made it from border of Texas and New Mexico to Vancouver in 2 days flat.
Man.
And yeah,
no-dos, like the original Red Bull.
Yeah, the original, just pure caffeine. I would drive till I would start to doze, pull over, sleep for 30 minutes, jump up and keep going. It was crazy. But shortly after moving to Canada, the relationship crashed and burned, and I realized there was a reason it was a long distance relationship.
Yep.
And as crazy as that whole thing was, she's a good woman. But as long as she wanted me to be, and as long as I was in a relationship with her, always going to be a boy.
Right. Yeah.
The age difference was too extreme. So that didn't work out, but I stayed in Canada for a while, did whatever odd jobs I could, because I'm basically an illegal alien. Oh, I forgot this part. When I got to Vancouver, This is, again, post 9/11, no way this would ever happen.
Right.
You got this young guy with long hair, leather jacket, beat up old van, and they're like, hey, what's your purpose here? And I'm like, I'm just visiting friends for the weekend, man. Figured I'd come through. He's like, all right, thanks a lot. Have a good trip. And if they'd looked in the back, I've got like throwing stars and nunchucks and swords and all this shit that I thought I was, such a badass warrior. And they never would have let me through. So they let me through for the weekend. And I stayed for 3 years. Again, no way that could happen now.
Right. You're going to jail for sure on the way out.
Yeah. It was interesting times. Beautiful. God, the country's so beautiful up there. British Columbia, like old growth forests where 500-year-old trees are common. Just beautiful. Talk about God's country. It really is amazing. And did whatever odd jobs I could, drywalling or working at restaurants under the table. Because again, I'm basically an illegal alien. I'd sold the van, and at one point, got to the point where I was literally homeless. Didn't have the place to live, no money, and literally went to restaurants at closing time asking if they had scraps. And I don't regret a second of that. Because of that experience, I know that I'm a survivor. Whatever comes, I got this. So it was actually a beautiful piece in my puzzle, to figure a lot of shit out about who I am and how I can show up. So no regret. Eventually ended up getting arrested in Canada for shoplifting because, you're homeless and
you're broke.
Things you do. Yeah. And they're like, so we're looking at your ID here and you're not supposed to be here this long. I'm like, yeah, funny thing that it's just, you guys are so great here. I just couldn't bring myself to leave. They're like, okay, well, you got a choice. You can leave, go back to the US on your own accord, and we'll forget this ever happened, or we'll pay your way back to wherever you want to go and you'll never come to Canada again. I'm like, I got it. Good. Thank you guys so much. Been a great visit. Appreciate you. And went back to Texas. So
did you just hitchhike back to Texas? Or?
No, got a plane ticket. Got a plane ticket back to Texas. Called mom.
Mom.
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
Mom. Shockingly, the relationship with the witch didn't work out. And if I can come home, it's probably the most relieved your mom's ever been. Like I'm guessing just in the couple hours that I've known you, you've probably been into some crazy shit. But I got to guess that moment in time is maybe the most relieved she's ever been. Like, oh, great.
Yeah, she actually kind of liked her, but so is what it is. But
hey, by the way, I've got to interrupt and tell them what we're drinking tonight. Yeah. I'm smoking the Yamasa Davidoff, and this is the Don Pilar tequila. It's fucking amazing. Mm-hmm. It's the darkness and consistency of like a whiskey. Tell me about this because you recommended this, so I went and picked up a bottle, and this is like a tequila. I mean, it's an añejo, but it tastes like whiskey. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's my next door neighbor turned me onto it, and he when he gave it to me as a gift, and I'm like, what the hell is that? I drink tequila. He goes, that is tequila. I'm like, it's brown like whiskey, and he goes, no, it's aged in an oak barrel for like 100 years or something like that.
It's really amazing.
Super smooth. It's got that woody taste. So yeah, it's like a really smooth tequila whiskey.
Yeah, like most people that grew up in California, I had a couple nights in TJ and then a couple nights in the Army where cheap tequila did not do my body well. So the smell of tequila, anything mixed with tequila, expensive tequila, cheap tequila, it all just rots my brain and my stomach. And it's so bad. Like I've had so many bad experiences with tequila that I cannot drink it. And when you said, I'm like, okay, cool, I'll drink what I normally drink and you can have your tequila. And then I saw it and I was like, oh, that's something different. I got to try that. And I'm very glad I did because it's super yummy. I might even pour myself another shot here. I know.
Yeah, I'm not, please do. I'm not a big drinker, but that's nice. That's smooth. And I told you my other one, the only thing I like is Guinness.
Perfect. We'll have one of those next.
I don't drink beer, and I've got an emotional attachment to Guinness from my time in Scotland. Young and dumb. This again, 18 years old. I kind of brought my first pub fight in Scotland. I walked into this is before I knew the martial arts and self-defense and everything I do now. But I walked into a Scottish pub and ordered a Coors Light. Yeah, you can imagine how well that went. It's the scene in the movie where the record goes and everyone looks And I'm like, oh, shit. And the woman behind the bar goes, yeah, have a Guinness. I'm like, oh, okay. And Guinness is good. A lot stronger than Coors Light. So a couple of those and I'm feeling good. And I feel this tap, tap, tap on the shoulder. I'm like, fuck. Yeah, because just the way it happened, just the way he did it, I'm like, oh, God. And I turn around, he's like, oi, you're an American, aren't you? I'm like, huh? He goes, well, let me ask you, you ever had a Glasgow kiss? I'm like, no. He goes, let me be your first. Wham! Headbutts me, right?
Headbutt you?
Headbutts me. Yeah, that's a Glasgow kiss. Now, I luckily knew something was coming because the way. So I moved. He just caught me on the side and I fucking wail on him. I don't know who hit who. We both go to the ground. I'm wailing on him. He's wailing on me. All of a sudden, 3 guys pick me up with my arms behind my back. I'm like, this is where I die.
Yeah. For sure. For sure.
And he gets up and goes, yeah, you don't hit too bad for an American. Bought me a pint. We hung out for the rest of the night.
See, this is some weird shit that only happens in Europe. Like,
oh, dude, it's Friday night fun for the boys. It's nothing personal. Now, if I had tried to talk my way out of it or run, they would have killed me.
Right.
But because I actually put up a fight, it's like, he's a wee bit soft, but he's all right, isn't he?
So I may have a friend about your size that may have done a couple years in prison and may have done a couple and something similar. The first day on the yard, he's like looking around. He kind of looks like you and I. And he's like, well, I don't speak Spanish. I'm not black.
Right.
Guess I'm hanging out with the guys with a bunch of Nazi tattoos. He's like, this is uncomfortable because they never found out, but he's half Jewish. And so he goes over there and he's kind of like, so I guess I hang out with you guys. And he's like, well, you have 2 choices. You can either fight the biggest white guy or the biggest black guy right now. And he looks around and he's like, well, both of them are pretty big, but I guess I probably don't want to fight the guys that I'm going to try to hang with. So he had to go fight the biggest black guy. And then later on, the white guys didn't want him, but the black guys were so impressed that he stepped up and was willing to fight the biggest black guy in the yard that he ended up being adopted by all the black guys and was very safe and very fun. It has a very similar story where they were like good boys the rest of the time. And I'm like, that's the weirdest story ever. And I never want to go to prison.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I've thought the same thing. I'm like,
So were you this size? Were you this build when you were a kid? Or
no, remember I'm living in a spiritual commune and
eating vegetables.
18 years old. Yeah. It was a vegan diet at the commune.
Oh, so you were 112 pounds.
I wasn't necessarily vegan, but yeah, that was the food there. I remember when I went back to visit high school friends in Israel once, they gave me shit. They're like, you're a vegan now? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you're wearing a leather jacket. And I'm like, fuck off. Don't use logic on me.
So good.
Yeah, I didn't really think it all the way through.
So when do you, because I know your thing now is mostly fitness based, and I know your men's group is more than that. It's spirituality. It's like being in a good place mentally. It's kind of like living your truth. But
that's that's pretty woo-woo the way you put it. Here's the thing with the men's group. Most of and I teach self-defense as well, right? I've studied under, and I'm a humble practitioner. I'm a beginner. I'm not saying I'm an expert or anything. I study under Fred Mastro, Master of Defense System. As I said to you earlier, if you've seen the movie Taken with Liam Neeson, Fred and his team taught Liam Neeson for that movie. The hand-to-hand you see Liam do in that movie is what we do.
And it's called?
Mastro, M-A-S-T-R-O.
Okay.
Defense System. Yeah. So
this is like if I remember, because I watched Taken about 20 times, so I probably do remember. This is a lot of like joint manipulation, demobilizing. Is that a word? Demobilizing, immobilizing, immobilizing.
You made it a word.
There we go. I made it a word.
Yeah.
So making sure people aren't mobile, like a lot of like immediately neutralizing threats, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's the thing, and I've played martial arts most of my life, and MDS is probably one of the most effective systems I've ever studied. It's based on biomechanics and science, not on strength and athleticism. So for self-defense, a woman half my size can use it effectively against a guy my size. Yeah, that's the advantage. And it's pretty amazing, because I did jiu-jitsu like you, and did Muay Thai and did all that stuff, and it's super, super effective. But those are sports. They're not self-defense. Right. Martial arts are not self-defense. Martial arts are based in culture and tradition and history.
And rules.
Yeah. Well, yeah, sport for sure. But, like a lot of martial arts, like, well, this is the way we've done it for 300 years. I'm like, well, cool story, Sparky, but people don't fight the way they did today. They don't fight the same way today they did 300 years ago. Why wouldn't you evolve? right? If it's a dead system, if this is just the way it is, then you're never learning, you're never growing, you're never evolving. Fred, it's a living system. With MDS, he's always evolving, always updating, always changing. He started with Penjak Silat, and then, it's funny because there's a couple of videos on YouTube of like 20 years ago when he fought MMA. He did 2 fights, got his ass kicked in both fights. And some people, get the keyboard warriors, MDS doesn't work. Look, he got his ass kicked. I'm like, so who's your favorite, UFC star? And they're like, well, GSP. I'm like, so he's never been defeated, right? No, he's lost. Yeah, every fighter has lost, jackwagon.
Yeah.
Everybody has. And that was when Fred was just doing Silat. Right. And his instructor at the time was like, well, Silat's the answer to everything. It's all you need. Wrong. Got taken to the ground, goes, oh, wait, this is different. And then went back, his instructor was like, well, you're the problem. You didn't train hard enough. But it's like, oh, okay, trained really, really, really hard. Same result second fight. He goes, no, I'm not the problem. And he saw the holes. Kind of like Bruce Lee did when he fought in San Francisco. And it's like, this took way too freaking long. And he broke away from Wing Chun and started developing Jeet Kune Do. Just like the Gracies did with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They refined the system. They took traditional Japanese Jiu-Jitsu and said, okay, now go out. Helio told his umpteen million sons, cousins, brothers, go use it. Go to the bars, the beaches, the streets, and get in fights. Go use this. And in doing so, they went, this is flowery traditional bullshit. That doesn't work. That really works. Let's keep that. And they refined the system to what's most effective. Fred did the same thing. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now. He's trained Western boxing, Silat, Sabat, on and on. And that's what he formed MDS to what really, really works. And what I like about it too is it's 100% street tested. There's no theory. I've said to people before, martial arts is like chemistry class. You can write theories on the chalkboard all day long. Until you actually get in the lab and mix the chemicals, you have no idea if your theory works or not. Most martial arts are controlled choreography. It's theory. They've never been in a real fight. Why are Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Western boxing and Western wrestling, American wrestling, why are they so effective? Because it's all lab time. You're going to know real quick if your shit works or not.
Yeah.
If you keep dropping your left every time you throw a right, you're going to get clocked and go, oh, okay, I get it. So the lab time is what's the most important. So Fred used to run nightclub security in Belgium, and I've got one video of him. He's like, I worked one club 4 nights a week for like 10 years. We had 1,000 people a night. That's 4,000 people, right? 16,000 people a month. Can you imagine how many fights? Against knife, against bottle, against gun, because the bouncers in Belgium are considered thugs. They're second-class citizens. They're not allowed to carry anything. No pepper spray, no flashlight, nothing. Empty hand against all these weapons. So you get real-time experience and you'll know what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, real fast.
Yeah, so he's like, somebody tells me, they've got 1 MMA fight, 2 MMA fights. Good for you.
Right.
But this is different. Street has no rule.
Right.
So that's what I like about that. But and I don't know how I got off on the whole tangent about.
No, I love it. It's so funny. I took a bunch of Krav Maga classes, and unfortunately, at the time that I was taking them 15 years ago, there was like one studio over on the west side. So I was driving like an hour each way, and I loved it, but it just didn't fit into the to the life. And I remember the instructor, who was an ex-Israeli special forces Krav Maga, all this crazy shit. He would tell us all the time. He's like, "Hey, man, none of this is pretty." And if somebody comes at you at a knife, you're going to get fucked up. But hopefully we're going to teach you enough to where like they only sever some, muscles on your forearms and you can fight them off and break their knee and get away in time. He's like, all this flashy shit you see on TV, none of that's going to work. Because even in MMA, you go to the ground with somebody that has a knife, you're going to die. You're going to get a punctured lung or something like that. And he was just so real about it. I was like, oh. And then I'd be like, so do we put pads? He's like, pads. He's like, what? He's like, what are you, 5 years old? And I'm like, oh, no, I just thought maybe we're going to put pads. He's like, well, I don't know. He's like, if you really go to kick somebody in the knee, do you want your shin to be just padded in fat, or do you want to have some calluses on your shin? And I'm like, well, I guess I'm getting in a bar fight this weekend. I want some calluses on my shin. And he was just so real. And I really appreciated it because I came from a wrestling background, and there's a lot of rules and there's a lot of things you can't do, where if you and I get in a street fight, I'm going to try to gouge your eyes out. That's outlawed in Division I. So weird.
Yeah, strange. Yeah, UFC too. Yeah.
UFC, they don't want you gouging anybody's eyes.
It. You know, it's like a lot of women, you know, in self-defense, is like, go for the balls. I'm like, you think this is the holy grail of self-defense, kicking a guy in the balls? But any guy that's been in a fight will tell you they've been hitting the balls and kept fighting.
Yeah.
It's not going to stop them. However, have you ever gotten an eyelash in your eye or accidentally hit your finger? You're like, shit.
Well, it's horrible.
If you can't see, you can't fight. So imagine you drive your fingers a digit deep into somebody's eyes. We're done.
Yeah, it's over.
It's over.
Yep.
Right. So yeah, it's exactly that, and I love that. You know, Fred talks about it. You know, his number one knife defense technique is the Usain Bolt technique.
Yes.
Fucking run. If you have a chance, run, because you're gonna get cut. You know, I had another knife instructor in Filipino martial arts who said, "Here's the reality of knife fights. If two guys fight, if you're fighting with knives, if I am of greater skill than you, I'm gonna bleed. You're gonna die. If you're of greater skill, you're gonna bleed. I'm gonna die. If we're both of equal skill, we're both gonna die. End of story. Still want to do a knife fight? It's like,
run.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Who was the guy that taught you the Filipino arts on the knives and the sticks and stuff?
There's a lot of guys. I did back in Texas. Tracy Anthony is my brother from another mother. I trained with him. He's trained CELOD and FMA, and he trained under Herman Sawanda and CELOD, Dan Inosanto, and the Filipino martial arts and stuff like that. So.
There's a guy there's a guy in Santa Monica, I think Mark Makita or something like that. And he was a choreographer for a lot of these 80s, 90s, you know, American Ninja 4 and stuff like that. And his dad was a special forces guy. And then he learned knife fighting, and his dad started the school that movie Hunted is based on, the one with Benicio del Toro and them, where they learn how to knife fight and all that stuff. So his dad started that school in the military. And the reason he started that is because he was stationed in the Philippines. And I didn't believe him, so I had to look this up. The last sanctioned fight to the death in the Philippines happened in 1983. Wow. Because they got all their steel taken away when they were colonialized. So they had to learn how to fight with bamboo shards and sticks and clubs and all the stuff. So the Filipino martial arts system is like, how quickly can I kill you with a sharp stick? Yeah. And they up until 1983, they had fights to the death. And I'm like, holy shit, we think we're tough with MMA. No.
We're so soft. We're so soft. It's like when I got to go to Thailand to train Muay Thai. My instructor at the time in Dallas was Saxon Janjira, and he would take us summer trips. And bro, I thought I was tough before Thailand. Like, it was ridiculous. I mean, we would run 5 miles on the beach, train technique for an hour, and then we get to have breakfast. And then like we'd go to the camp in the afternoon. I'd literally dropped 5 pounds in one day from sweating. We're in November, so it's not even that hot. But we were I get in the ring with this guy, a little Thai guy. He's half my size.
Yeah, 14-year-old, 100-pound dude.
No, he don't emasculate me that much. He wasn't 14. He was at least 17. No, you know, I wasn't as big as I am now, but still, he was half my size. And, you know, we're splashing water at each other, you know, like just trading blows back and forth. And I see the opening. I go for it. I hit him with jab, cross, left kick to the ribs, right elbow to the temple, and I connected with all of them. You know, you can feel it when you connect. Just boom. You hit anybody with that over here in the street. It's done. This guy backs up and goes, good warm up. I go, what? Oh, fuck. Oh, God, this is going to hurt. And I'm just like, and I was right. It hurt a lot. Those guys are so conditioned. They start fighting 7, 8 years old, and they're fighting once a week, at least once a month. So in full contact, elbows, knees, everything. So by the time they're 18, guys like me and you are made of paper. And it was very humbling. Very humbling. Yeah.
How long were you in Thailand?
We were there like, God, a couple months at a time, 2 weeks, 2 months, like that. Yeah.
That's awesome. What an awesome experience though.
Yeah. It was really, really cool. Yeah.
So, all right. So you had this really storied history growing up. You're way into athletics and fighting and all types of combat sports. How in God's green earth did you end up at Countrywide doing mortgages?
You know, I was trying to figure out. It's the journey of who do I want to be? What do I want to do? And how can I make money? Right? And the opportunity, I knew somebody who knew somebody, and the opportunity just landed in my lap, and they were going to train me. I had done oil and gas brokering at one point. Same thing. Just fell into that. Knew somebody who knew. It was actually one of my personal training clients who owned the company. That was a horrible experience. Lying to people for a living.
Perfect.
Like if you ever saw the movie Boiler Room, that was it.
Perfect.
I'm like, I can't do this, man. We're trying to convince Mom and Pa Kettle that this $300,000 hole in the ground is the best thing since sliced bread. And we know it's not going to do shit. We know they're not going to make it. The landowners, the operators, they make all the money. The investors, they weren't going to make anything. If you're really uber rich and you need a tax write-off, great investment. Otherwise, and so I knew the story, but the owner was like, just sell it. I don't care. And I'm like, yeah, I can't do this. So somehow I ended up at Countrywide. And
this is in the subprime heyday, right? Like early 2000s.
Yeah, early 2000s.
What then Hillary Clinton started calling liar loans. We remember Ninja, right? No income, no assets.
Dude, yeah. We were doing low doc and no doc subprime loans for anybody. Like no qualifications, and telling they're all on arms, they're all adjustable rate mortgages, and we're telling them, don't worry, if the market adjusts, it's going to adjust down.
Perfect.
Wrong.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, of course it goes the exact opposite way, and now the qualifications have changed, so these people go to refi and they don't qualify anymore. We were the reason. Well, Angelo Mazzillo was the reason for the 2008 crash. Like it was criminal what these guys were doing, but. While I was there, I mean, I was making great money. Like I said, knocking down $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 a month.
Yeah, huge money 20 years ago.
Yeah.
In the mortgage business.
Yeah, especially for somebody with no experience like me. I just had the gift of gab, and that worked well enough, even though I still couldn't figure out the calculations at the time.
You're like, can somebody run this calculation for me?
Help me with this. Yeah, no, she wants my cell phone number, but I can't do the calculation. Yeah, whatever. And it was funny too, because I remember back then living in Texas, in Dallas, and that was my first glimpse into the housing prices in California, because I'm doing a refi for this woman who's got like an $850,000 home. I'm like, wow, this must be like a mega mansion. When I see the comp pictures, it's a fucking shoebox. I'm like, what the hell is that? Like that would be $30,000 here in Texas. What do you mean 850,000? I'm like, what? So yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, I was miserable in that job, man.
It's shocking that somebody who's into fitness and outdoors and fighting, right? Like you just want to be
sitting in a cubicle all day with literally gray cubicle, gray carpet on the floor. The shell on the computer was great. The blinds on the windows were gray. I'm like, is it your mission to steal my soul? Is that
yes,
like what?
That is exactly what the mortgage industry is for. It's to steal your soul.
I think that was it. But yeah, I sat there and go, okay, all right, enough. If I could do, it's like from my hippie days, I still got this dreamer, it's like, okay, if I could do anything in the world, what would I do? And it was between fighting and acting at that. Gotten into acting, and I really loved that.
So wait, let's back up a step or two. Okay. So obviously fighting, that makes sense. You were into martial arts and fitness, and anybody who grew up in the 70s or 80s just fell in love with all the Chuck Norris movies, all the American Ninja movies. Yeah. Who was the guy that was in American Ninja? Because he's like a C- celebrity. I feel like I could get him on this podcast because I think he lives right down in the valley. Like I think I could pay him $500 and get him on the podcast. Luckily, I talked to you and do it for free, but David Dudikoff.
Your wife made me dinner, and you got me tequila. So
perfect.
It's not really free.
It's not really free, but that's that's the benefit of marrying a Mexican lady. There's always just like some homemade meal ready to whip up. She had like chicken and avocado, and I'm like, that's the healthiest meal I've seen in this house in 2 weeks. Like how did he get it and I didn't? But anyway, I digress. Michael Dudikoff, I think was his name, the guy that was American Ninja.
That's it.
So that makes sense how you get into martial arts and fitness. But how does a guy, Miami to Texas to Israel be like, I should really try this acting thing too?
So funny story, back in Israel in high school, my sister, I've got a younger sister, and she was trying out for the school play. She's like, come on, try out with me. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that shit. She's like, come on, do it. I'm like, I don't do that sissy shit. Like, I'm trying to be a real man at 16.
Right. When we don't know shit.
Yeah, nothing. Anyway, she's like, come on. I'm like, fine. So as a joke for her, I go and try out for the school play, and I landed the lead role. I'm like, all right. And we do the performance, and teachers that I hadn't given homework to in 2 months are giving me standing ovations. I'm like, this is cool. I kind of like this. Do I still have to hand in the homework? They're like, yes. I'm like,
Yes.
damn it. All right. So that was, the first foray into acting. And backstory a little further. In grade school and middle school, before the transition to earlier, I was scrawny. I didn't play sports. I didn't have good grades. I bought my clothes at Nerds R Us. I got beat up as a hobby and I couldn't get a date if I paid for it. So that was the genesis of getting into fitness, into martial arts. Cause I'm like, the only person that can change this is me. At least I had that awareness. But it also, there was a real big wound of not good enough. And I think most of humanity suffers from, like Tony Robbins will talk about that. There are two biggest false beliefs or wounds, or that somehow we're not good enough, whether it's not rich enough, not smart enough, not young enough, not old enough, and we're not going to be loved because of it. Right? So everybody's carrying that. But for me, that was a big, big one. So all of a sudden, you try it for the school play, and now the spotlight's on you and everybody loves you. It's like, oh, this is, yeah. So that's how the acting thing started.
Yep.
So that gives you the backstory. So now we're back at Countrywide.
Back in Countrywide.
And I'm like, okay, acting or fighting, what's it going to be? And I closed my eyes and I pictured winning UFC light heavyweight belt. Thank God I'd gone to light heavyweight. Because in the beginning, if you remember, heavyweight was an open-ended weight category.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 205 and above. I'm like, fuck that. I'm not going in 205 and fighting some guy 275.
Oh, dude. Every time I do these amateur boxing matches, or they're supposed to be for charity or like old man's league, the rules are, okay, there's weight classes in 10-pound increments. And then when you get to 200, it's 200 to 280. So I weigh in at like 205, 210. I'm always starving myself to get to 199 because I don't want to show up at 201 pounds and they're like, all right, go fight the 280-pound guy. Yeah. You're fine. You're a little faster. I'm like, fuck that. Exactly. So I'm very glad UFC put light heavyweight in. Yeah, okay, so you'd be in the light heavyweight division.
So I picture winning the belt, hold over my head. I'm like, yeah, all right, that feels. Open my eyes. I'm like, that feels good, man. I like that. And then I closed my eyes and I pictured, winning the Oscar and standing up there getting to thank my mom. I literally had tears streaming down my face. I'm like, that's okay. I quit my job the next day. Didn't have a real plan put together.
This seems like a reoccurring theme to you. Like, we're going to follow our goals and not
impulsive much.
Yeah, work really hard, but not really have a plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly. Have fun storming the castle.
Well, yeah, exactly. Princess Bride reference for those of you under 40. Go watch that movie too.
I think they got not a chance.
Not a chance. So of course, then you moved to California, right? Like every other wannabe actor.
Well, first I tried becoming a successful actor in Dallas, Texas, which is
that's not a place to be.
No, it's a commercial and industrial market. So you can do industrials, for anybody who doesn't know, is like in-house training videos for companies that nobody else is ever gonna see.
Right, right.
If you land a national commercial, that could pay your bills for a year. So that was cool. If you could. I didn't. But even though I was broke financially, I was exponentially happier than I was working at Countrywide, making all the money. That's when I realized I'm not money motivated. I like money, don't get me wrong, but it's purpose driven for me. It's like, okay, I got to have something that I believe in, something I'm working. I did. Prison Break was filming in Texas. I booked Prison Break. I think Friday Night Lights. I did a Lifetime movie.
I love Friday Night Lights, by the way. We have to pause, and I have to tell everybody that's my favorite TV show of all time.
No, I'm sorry. I got called back on Friday Night Lights. I did not book Friday Night Lights. My friend at the time, Drew Waters, played the assistant coach.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he got Friday Night Lights. Yeah.
Oh. Bastard. You weren't Texas enough. You spent too much time in Israel.
Yeah, he had that
Canada.
He had that twang down. Yeah. But anything big that came there, I booked. And I was a good actor. So I was like A-list of Dallas, which is not saying much. It's like the big fish in the small pond, right? But I got called in on all the big projects. So we had 5 casting directors in Dallas. And for
comparison, there's 5 casting directors on my block in LA.
Yeah, 500 casting directors in LA. Yeah. But I booked a Western movie called The Man Who Came Back with Armand Asante, Billy Zane, Eric Braeden. He was the producer. Eric Braeden was like the longest running soap star in history, like 30 years on, I think it was. But I became friends with Billy Zane on the set, and we were at dinner one night, and he's like, "Bro, what are you doing in Dallas? Like, dude, you've got the look, you've got the attitude. Like, come on, man, you got to get to LA." And I'm like, "Okay, that was the motivation I needed." It's like,
I got a plan. I know Billy Zane.
Billy believes in me. I can do it. Yeah, and Billy was gonna set me up with his agent and all this stuff. Happened. Moved to LA. No, I mean, it's like we met a couple times. He's still cool as hell. But yeah, and then in retrospect, I was so fucking green and desperate. I wouldn't have introduced me to my agent. Like,
right.
I don't blame him a bit.
Yeah, it's a sacred relationship between the actor who's made it and his agent.
Yeah. It's like, hey, here's this
Mm-hmm.
noob from Texas who's terrified and desperate. Like, let me bring him in. No.
So I've got to tell my great Billy Zane story. You're gonna like this since you know the guy. So right after I got divorced, I had employed a bunch of dudes that were younger than me. So they got me way into this like electronic music, and this was the height of the electronic fever. It's like Avicii and all these guys. I'm kind of excited because all the dudes that are dead now, or they're not playing anymore. I got to see all of them a bunch of times. So we bought tickets for this DJ. I can't even remember his name now. He was coming in from Germany, big deal. He was going to play this club. So we bought tickets online for like $27 or something to go see this DJ. So we show up at this club in Hollywood, and it turns out it's opening night of some club, White Lotus or something. I think it was the Avalon was getting rebranded or something. It was a big deal. It's like a big Hollywood opening. And they fucked up because what they didn't realize is they sold a bunch of $27 tickets to these kids that showed up in jeans and t-shirts. And I'm like the oldest guy there at like 31. And so there's all these look like skater kids, jeans and a t-shirt. I mean, they look like they just rolled out of their mom's basement. And then in the other line, there's all these people that are going to pay $5,000 for bottle service, and they're dressed to the nines, and every Hollywood hooker is out there. So it just so happens our line and that line gets to the front of the line at the same time. And the bouncers are confused, right? Because they're expecting like $200 tips for me to go to the front of the line. And we're just like a bunch of yahoos that bought $27 tickets to see this DJ. So we show up, I'm at the front of the line right as the cool kids line gets to the front of the line, and it's Billy Zane and like 4 of the hottest chicks you've ever seen in your entire life.
I believe that.
And the bouncer goes, he looks at both of us and he's like, "Give me your ticket." I'm like, whoa. There's no way I'm going before Titanic. And Billy Zane not only is offended that the bouncer doesn't know who he is, he thinks it's hilarious that I've just made this joke about him being Titanic. I'm like, "And you were that purple motherfucker in the pajamas that did the first superhero movie.
Yeah.
You really should have been Iron Man." He just starts laughing, right? He thinks this is hilarious. And I'm like, "And you're with the 4 hottest chicks I've ever seen. So, sir, you got to go first." And so he thinks it's hilarious. He brings me and my buddy to the table with him. We end up partying like 6 hours that night. I don't know what we drank or what we consumed or ingested into our body, but I just remember it was wild. And about 5 hours into it, we're pouring each other's drinks. We're having a good time. I'm like, "Billy, man, come on. There's 4 of them. Can I take one of them home or go with you?" And he looks at me and he's like, "Son, you're not the superstar here." And I'm like, "Fuck this dude."
Classic Billy.
He's gonna go have a fivesome, whatever that is, a pentagon with these 4 hot chicks, and you can't even like peel off one for the guy that was willing to let you go first. Nope. So that's my Billy Zane story. Yeah. I hope one day this podcast becomes so big he hears this story and I get a call. I'm happily married now, so I can't get a call back for the 5 girls, but it would be cool to hang out with them.
He call you back for that.
Yeah, I don't think so.
He'd be like, "You're still not the superstar.
You're still not the superstar."
Like, "I got you into the club.
Yeah.
You're at my table."
Exactly. So a couple years in, a couple months in, like when do you decide acting's not for you and you go into actor 12-step program?
A couple years in, man. It's, I just got so frustrated with the hoops you got to jump through. Again, I got called in on everything in Dallas. I hear the amount of shit you got to go through, the casting director workshops, which are really casting assistants making an extra buck on the side. They're not going to get you into the office. Right? They give some lame ass voice. You've got postcards you got to send. All this shit to just go, "Look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me." I'm just done with it, right? I just reached this point. And my girlfriend at the time, she was in the industry and on the other side, same girlfriend I'm with now. She's working for Netflix now. She was with another studio, but she'd been in the industry and operations and executive work. And I said, listen, do I even have a shot here? I'm just getting real fed up with this. And she goes, yeah, Russell, you're a good actor. I've seen your work. You're a good looking guy. The problem is there's 10,000 more just like you. And this is not an industry based on talent. It's based on who you know. Any other skilled trade, doctor, lawyer, electrician, you got more education, more experience, more talent than anybody in the room, you get the job and you get paid the most. Acting, you could be the most talented, well-trained actor and the part will go to the producer's cousin's boyfriend or whoever's got the agency package deal, right? Because that's the way that you want to book the A-list from this agency. Well, then you have to take the B and the C list actors as well, or you don't get the A. So it's a whole package deal. So it's all political. It's not based on your talent. And I talked to one of the casting directors and he's like, we don't even get to make the choices half the time anymore. It's these corporate suits that are the producers now, because you got, Universal bought by General Electric or whatever it was back then. And they know nothing about the industry. And he told me about this one time they're having an audition. Nobody's getting it right, like swinging a mess all day long. Finally, at the end of the day, this girl comes in, knocks it out of the park. She's brilliant. And the casting director's like, yes, we got her. And when she leaves the room, the producer goes, oh, thank God, I couldn't wait for her to leave. And he goes, what? He goes, yeah, when she smiled, I could see her gums. Reminds me of my girlfriend. I fucking hate that. Because of that, she didn't get the part. She was the best actor they'd seen all day, put her heart and soul into her craft. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to let somebody like that decide my future. So I took a really, really hard look at why I wanted to be an actor in the first place. The higher side, the story I told myself is, I want to be a force for good in the world. And as an Oscar-winning actor, and I could have such a much better platform for doing that. But I don't have to be an actor to change the world. Tony Robbins is an actor, and you can do this one person at a time. But I looked deeper. I'm like, there's more than that. So I looked deeper and I looked deeper. There's that part of me that's afraid to let go of the idea of being famous. What the fuck? That all about? Besides, ego and the need for significance. And then it's like, oh, it's that little boy that's still afraid that he's not good enough. The rest of the world to prove it to him. Shit. Okay. Yeah, I'm done. Because I'm not going to let a wound and a false belief inform my career decisions, right? Like you wouldn't let how old's your son?
5.
You wouldn't let a 5-year-old drive your car. He cannot handle that adult responsibility. So why would I let a 5-year-old belief system drive life? I'm like, I'm done, right? So that was it for acting, and it was incredibly liberating to drive by the studios and not give a shit what's happening inside. It was amazing. So yeah, that was, started. That's when I started studying strategic intervention life coaching under Tony Robbins, going back into fitness. I'd always done personal training to support my acting career. Now I was doing it because I loved it. And, I remember I had a scenario with a client. She trained really, really hard. Harder than most guys I trained. She busted her ass, but her results were 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps back. And I'm like, what's going on? One morning, she's pissy. What is wrong with you? And she's like, I doesn't have to be perfect for you, for my boss, for everybody. She's crying. I'm like, whoa, okay, step off the leg press. Like, let's relax. Let's go talk. And she's talking to me and I'm listening to her. And I don't know where I'm listening from, like just tuning into something different. And I'm like, who's the first person, probably my own experience, who's the first person who told you weren't good enough? She's like, what are you talking about? Blah, blah, blah. And I go, how old were you when your dad told you that you were good enough? She looks at me like a deer in the headlights and then just bursts into tears. And all of a sudden, all this stuff comes out about how, her mom was a compulsive eater and she would eat her emotions, right? She would stuff herself with food so she didn't have to deal with it. Her dad was never emotionally available. The only way that she could get his attention was to perform at a super high level. So she had this image that she had to be perfect and she had to do everything right, but she would train her ass off with me being the perfect little girl and then go binge eat all weekend long. And she wasn't even aware that she was doing that. And from that conversation and the conversations that followed, she's like, you've changed my life. And when she said that to me, Scott, there's no acting role I ever played that filled me with such a sense of fulfillment. I'm like, okay, that's it. So that was the shift for me and starting down this other path. And that, now fitness as a modality to help transform people, not just physically, but mentally as well. And, En's work, which you gave a very woo-woo example of, we help guys get in touch with their feelings. Not quite. I co-facilitate a group called Ignite the King, IGKNIGHT, Ignite the King. And we base it somewhat off of Jungian psychology, the 4 primary male archetypes of the magician and the king.
Wait, say that again. Your mic was cutting out just a bit. You're right. You're fine. You're fine.
My headphones, I keep cutting in and out.
Yeah, you're good. Right. These mics are really sensitive.
Right.
They got to be right up in your mouth, like you're trying to make out with it. So, right. What are the 4 archetypes?
Hey now, how's that?
There you go. There's your late night DJ voice.
Yeah, I'd be like, gentlemen, all ladies up, all tops down. 2 for 1 table dance.
Yeah, I feel like you've done that before. Ladies and gentlemen, put away your 1s and take out your 5s because destiny is coming to the stage.
I think you've been there before too.
Yeah. Okay. So what are the 4 male archetypes, and what is this kind of based on?
Jungian psychology.
Okay.
The lover, the warrior, the magician, and the king. And the truth is, this is kind of part of the monomyth of humanity. Like, these are archetypes that are in the masculine psychology, whether you know it or not. And they're playing out in your life, whether you know it or not. And it's playing out in a positive way or a negative, destructive way. And if you're not aware of that, probably the second, right? So when we talk about the lover, what do most guys know about being a lover? Like, oh, I'm going to fucking tag that. I'm going to get some. No, it's not sex, bro. Like, where's the joy in your life? Where's that childlike sense of wonder? I mean, look at your father. Look at a newborn child. That is the epitome of unconditional love. And we all had that at one point. Lost it. So now that's probably the most neglected, abused archetype in masculine psychology, right? Because men are told, you don't cry, you don't show your feelings, suck it up, don't be a bitch. Really? No. Can you not be a masculine man and be emotionally facile, in touch with your feelings? And the warrior, again, that's probably the most muted because, the warrior lives in service to the king. The warrior lives in purpose and a mission to serve and to protect. Now it's become a slogan on a police car, but that's the purpose of the warrior. The warrior will always sacrifice himself for the greater good, for the good of the kingdom. But a warrior without purpose, without mission, is nothing more than a mercenary. Right? So where are you showing up as a mercenary in your work? Right? You're like, fuck them. I'm going to win and I don't care what it costs. See this all the time. The magician is, again, the manipulator, for women, it's the seductress. The king is like, where are you given blessings in your life? Where are you, we talk about your kingdom. So the 4 pillars of kingship are sovereignty, right? Order, blessings, and legacy. So how can you have a kingdom if you have no sovereignty? Let's look at what's happening right now. How's not having borders working out for us? Not so great, right? If you can't set a boundary, there's no sovereignty. And if you have no sovereignty, you have no order in your life. There's no order. And if you have no order, whether it's your finances, your relationships, your health, how are you given blessings? And what's your legacy? What's gonna be there long after you're gone? What are you leaving behind? Right? We talk about, in your role as kingship. It's not like I'm the king. It's not like Denzel, like King Kong ain't got nothing on me. It's a kingship. You are the captain of the ship for a very brief period of time. Where are you taking it? Right? So when you start exploring that kind of stuff, and we get into, it's men are lost in our society. And I can say this as a guy that's not afraid to scrap, right? Like I've done the dark shit. I've been in the bar fights. I've been a bouncer and stuff like that. But in tribal and indigenous cultures, there was a very definitive rite of passage from boyhood to manhood, right? Where you give up the trappings of being a boy and the connection to the womb and the mother. You embrace the positive qualities of what it means to be a man. Leadership, accountability, integrity, honor, service. We don't have those rites of passage anymore. And as a result, we have a bunch of little boys running around in adult male bodies. We see it all the time by the way men are showing up in the world. And we used to have the role models of the warrior and the king and things like this, the shaman. Now we have what? Rappers, celebrities, sports stars, fucking horrible examples of what it means to be a man, right? Because it's all about bagging and tagging. Right? It's just about conquest, about taking. So we take men through those rites of passage again and allow men to, one, own their shit. Because everything that's fucked up in your life, you're the only one responsible for it. And when you can face your shadows head on, then you can claim your gold. Then you can step into the light, your power, your purpose. And when men can start living with purpose, like imagine if we had an entire culture of awakened warriors, of masculine men that go, no, this is what we live for. This is what we stand for. No, you're not going to encroach upon my sovereignty, my family, my anything. And they can do it from a place of love, right? It's not about anger. It's not about violence. It's about, I know my standards. I will not falter at all. I think we'd be in a completely different state in our country and in our world right now if men showed up like that. So that's what we do with Ignite the King, is we connect men to their truth, to their power, and help them clear all the bullshit out of their life again.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's so powerful. And you're speaking my language. I belong to a group called Front Row Dads, where we're trying to be, fathers who happen to be business owners, not business owners that are trying to squeeze in some time to be fathers. Cause I know we all make mistakes as parents, and like I'm always terrified that I've got this pristine little hard drive in there and my son and my daughter, and I'm just downloading all this shit on them with all of my mistakes, right? But you're right, there is no rite of passage. There's no true bar mitzvah. There's no go out into the forest and kill your first coyote. There's nothing that really makes you step over to the side of like, oh, well, now I am personally responsible for whatever it is, myself, my whatever. Right. And I feel very lucky that, even though some people would chalk this up to toxic masculinity, I feel very lucky that my parents were like, hey man, like we just don't have a lot of money. At 18, you're either leaving for college or getting a full-time job. And I found option 3, leaving for the army, which my parents, again, were not so happy about. But there was that rite of passage. Like you show up at basic training and they strip all that little boy shit out of you, and they make you do stuff that you didn't think you were physically capable of doing. Right. And I'm glad I had that rite of passage. But I think we're seeing now this whole boomerang generation of guys just being like, well, I have college debt. I didn't know I was signing for college debt. I guess I got to go live back at my parents. And there's like this whole failure to launch generation where, eventually you got to go buy a house or start a business or have kids or get married or, find the nonprofit that's your passion. I don't care what it is, but you got to do something. You just can't, live in your fucking parents' basement and be on social media all day. Right.
And you talk about the toxic masculinity. Like,
I hate that term.
So do I. Because the problem is you've got a bunch of people out there that have defined masculinity itself as toxic. Masculinity is not toxic. The problem in our culture is not an abundance of toxic masculinity. The problem in our culture is a complete lack of masculinity and the power and everything it stands for. And it's not power over, it's power through, power to protect, to uphold the feminine as divine and sacred, right? And regarding fatherhood, just in the brief interaction with your son before we started recording, I saw the way you showed up for him, and you're doing everything right.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, like just the seeds you're planting. I love you very much, and like you're making sure he hears that, and you're speaking to him firmness, but with love and gentleness at the same time. And you're like, there's no question in his mind how important he is to you. So I saw that in that brief interaction. So.
Thanks, man. It means a lot. Shout out to John Vroman and the Front Row Dads, because they're helping mold that in a very big way. Like I've got to get you on John Vroman's podcast, because he has a lot more people that listen to it than I do, than my podcast. But just going through that lover, warrior, king, magician, like that's such a powerful dynamic for guys to be thinking in mind when they're raising little girls or little boys. So funny story. After I got married, my wife got pregnant about 65 days after we got married. Everybody thought I had knocked her up and we had a shotgun wedding, but no, she did in fact get pregnant right after we got married. Turns out the Hispanic woman, 10 years younger than me, very fertile. Weird how that happens. That. Yeah. And so I was a little terrified, because we had planned to like do a couple years of traveling and really grow into this relationship and then have kids. So I went around asking every dad I could find, hey man, what's the thing that you've done best with your child that you're doing now? Or if you have grown kids, what's the thing you did best? And I remember I hit a nerve with this one guy, and he started crying. This is like a realtor I've never met before. We go out for coffee and I'm like, hey, just as a closing thought, like, you have kids, what's the thing you did best? He starts crying. He's like, Scott, I was a horrible father. He's like, I won't go into all the details, but my wife and I are divorced. She was totally justified in divorcing me. I was absentee. I was a horrible father. He's like, and what I learned too late in life was that when you have little kids, you need to be your son's first hero and your daughter's first love. And if you always work from that state of mind and you show up as a man and you make sure you're your daughter's first love and your son's first hero, all the other shit will figure it out. And I was like, I mean, I can't even remember that realtor's name. I never did a deal with him, but that stuck with me. Yeah. It's now 6.5 years later. That stuck with me at such a deep level. I was like, oh man, that's a gift. Yeah. Yeah. And it was just some dumb question I was asking a bunch of people. So I'll have to write a book about it one day or something.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful, man. It's exactly right. And you know, it's part of the problems we have is we're all the wounded children of wounded children, right? Our parents didn't know any better. You know, our father's generation was the silent generation because men don't cry. They don't show their feelings. They don't, right? And you talk about the rite of passage, which is the military. Physical rite of passage where you like step the fuck up. Yeah, for sure. But how cool would it have been if you would have been given that sense of purpose and that sense of honor and integrity and all that other stuff, you know, and, you know, living from your heart, right? The warrior of the heart, totally different. Like that guy's never going to be a mercenary, just fighting for the highest bidder, ever, right? That man fights not because he wants to, but because he has to, and it's with purpose. It's to defend his family and to defend his values. And unfortunately, like I never served time in the military. I have so much respect for our military. Unfortunately, they're pawns for a corrupt government that is all about making money. And they're sacrificing our men and women with little regard to what happens to them afterwards or during. And it makes me sick. I hate seeing that because these are the bravest fucking people that we have in our country that are willing to step up and literally put their lives on the line. And they deserve respect and they deserve to be honored and they deserve to be cherished. And it's just not happening. But in that military environment as well, you're taught, don't feel, you don't cry, you don't hurt, you're stonewall. And that serves you in battle. Absolutely. When you come home to your family, not so much.
Not so much.
Not so much. And,
yeah.
And guys don't know how to change clothes. It's like, you know, I talk about, you know, in the summer, I'm wearing shorts and a tank top, right? Like I could be out, but when it's winter, I'm putting on a coat and pants and boots because it's cold. So if I'm on the battlefield, I'm armoring up, but I can't wear a suit of armor in the bedroom.
Right.
It's not. So you got to know how to transition. And that's part of, you know, the awareness that we have and that we develop as men.
And with your program, you know, without giving away too many trade secrets, is it a mastermind? Is it a 3-day live event I come to and I leave as a full person? Is it an ongoing coursework? Like, what is the actual program? Like, what does the work look like?
All of the above.
Okay.
Yeah, it's we do weekend immersions where it literally you're immersed in. That's the rite of passage for a lot of men. And then we have a year-long program that men can enroll in afterwards as well. It depends on the man. Some guys come to the weekend immersion and that's the piece they needed, right? It's like, okay, cool. Some guys are like, no, this is my brotherhood for life and I want to be a part of this. Great. Build that as well.
And let me ask, where does the health and fitness piece come into it, right? Because like, you know, a guy like you shows up, you know, you're a few years older than me, you're super fit, you know, tight t-shirt, whatnot. There's certain...
I buy them in children's extra medium so I look buff.
Perfect. Yeah. That's the secret. I got to do this. I'll look like a stuffed tamale. But you know, I think there's a certain perception in our country now where it's like, if you're young and you're fit or you're kind of yoked, you're just a dumb meathead who spends all your time in the gym. And if you're older with some gray hair and you super fit, it's like, oh, you're one of those alpha males that has to be a CEO and run triathlons. Like, it's crazy to me, especially the last year going through COVID. Nobody was talking about health and fitness. Nobody was talking about taking your vitamins. Nobody was talking about the immune system. And yeah, funny how that works. And it's like now there's this negative connotation in what I see a lot in popular culture of like being fit, right? And it's like, oh, we gotta celebrate the dad bod, and every middle class male that's in a sitcom is some like chubby fat fuck who fumbles through life. Like there's just there's this weird social construct happening where we're almost vilifying being fit and healthy or athletic And that's not everywhere, but I think that's kind of the direction pop culture is going.
That's absolutely the direction pop culture is going. Now we're going to go deep down a rabbit hole because there is a verifiable agenda to emasculate men that has been playing out in our country for a long time. And I'm not talking about just feminists. I'm talking about the culture as a whole has been trying, from the foods that we eat to the things that we watch, and everything in culture has been trying to emasculate men for decades now. And here's a fun fact. An 18-year-old male today has the same testosterone level as a 57-year-old man in the year 2000.
That can't be true.
Check it.
Wait.
Testosterone levels are dropping at a ridiculously rapid rate. Ridiculous. And it's on purpose is what I would tell you. Now, don't take my word for it. Check all this out. But why would they want to emasculate men? Well, when they're taking over our country, when they're when they're going to go ahead and bring socialism in or whatever. And again, I know we're going on the political side now.
Go for it.
But, when they're basically trying to control everything, who's going to stand up against that?
Yeah.
Strong alpha men. They don't want those.
Yeah, there's a reason that revolutions usually start in college campuses amongst young, healthy men. Yeah. You can look back to the Chinese boxer revolution in 1900. You can look at Venezuela. You can look at, the people that Che Guevara was leading. You can look at our revolutionary founders in the 1700s. It's always usually college educated men who've got a lot of ideas and a lot of testosterone, and they're somewhere between 18 and 25 years old. Those are normally your revolutionaries, and those are also usually your soldiers.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, there's this whole agenda to emasculate men and to feminize men, and see it like it's so pervasive now. It's ridiculous with this whole pronouns and the genders. And look, I'm like you, like if you're gay, cool, be gay. If you're like if you want to cross-dress, if you want, you do you. I'm cool with that. It's fine. Don't tell me I'm not allowed to use words like mother and father. I have to say birth giver? What? Fuck off. What? No,
some crazy shit, right?
Yeah, some crazy shit. I saw something the other day. They're knitting little penises, knitted penis and ball sacks to go into girls' diapers if the parents think that they might be transgender.
That can't be real.
I hope it's not real. But this is the thing. It's gone so far to the other side. It's ridiculous. And the demonization of masculinity. You're absolutely right. So, if the preconceived ideas people have, it's like, oh, you got gray hair and you're buff, like you one of those obnoxious alpha male. Like, no, that's how we have to show up as warriors of the heart and show them something different. Right. And we bring, you ask how the fitness aspect comes into the men's work. I've been involved in men's work since 2005 and men's empowerment, development, and different groups. And there's, groups that say the new warriors and, and all this stuff. And it's cool. They do good work. But I've also seen a majority of men in those groups that are so out of shape, they get winded walking up a flight of stairs and couldn't fight their way out of a wet paper bag. What fucking business do you have claiming the mantle of warrior if that's your condition? If your woman wouldn't feel safe walking next to you down the street because you couldn't, or even worse, wouldn't defend her if the need arose, what business do you have saying that you're a warrior? If you have no idea what you're willing to fight for and what you're willing to die for, like so many guys spend their time figuring out, like, what do I want to live for? What are you willing to die for, bro? Because a man who knows that, I don't want to face in battle. And this is the thing, is men have become so disempowered, so disenfranchised, so, just watered down.
Yeah.
And they have no purpose. And like, are we really being threatened by a group of soy boys? Like really?
I love the term soy boy. It's so good.
Like, really?
It's funny because this is the interesting dichotomy of, I'm definitely a libertarian, more right-leaning. We obviously live here in Southern California, home of the deep, 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 deep blue beliefs. And so I would consider most of my male and female friends are, you put whatever term you want on it, progressive, feminist, open-minded, I don't care, whatever terminology you want to use. And that shows up, and that's how society's going. And then I have a ton of single female friends in the professional world that I work out with the gym, that I know through my coaching program. And I get asked the question all the time by these single, high producing, amazing females who I would proudly date if I wasn't happily married. And they all ask me, they're like, Scott, man, don't you have any single friends?
Where's the real man?
Yeah, exactly. They're like, no, really, man, don't you have any single friends that are like, in decent shape, have a good job, they're cool to hang out with? I'm like, I gotta be honest, man, like all my friends that are like that, they're either taken or they happen to be gay. Nothing wrong with that, of course. Or like they don't fit the mold for anybody that I would want to set you up with. Yeah. And I mean, there's actually a epidemic of successful women who can't find equally successful men. And then I feel like there's an epidemic of women that are like, oh, I kind of want to be wooed. I kind of want to be loved. I kind of want to be impressed. I kind of want to be attracted to somebody in the bedroom and find the person I want to marry. And I'm, early 30s, mid 30s, early 40s. I can't find that dude. And I'm like, well, this is what happens when starting in the 80s, you basically feminize the male culture and tell them they can't be men. Yep. What's going to happen is you're not going to have any men to be attracted to.
Exactly. And destroy the nuclear family. And, it's like fatherless homes. We have a culture of men raised by women.
Yeah. Which shout out to single moms.
I'm one of them.
You're one of them, right? Yeah.
But I had to find my masculinity. I had to find that warrior's path. I had to find my balls through my own work. But most men don't have either the drive or the path to do that. And we live in a culture that numbs that. It's like, no, just turn on Netflix. No, just grab another soda. Fine. Look, shiny object. And here we have a bunch of disempowered
soy boys.
Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel. Yeah, exactly. Captain Marvel has to be a chick. There, shout out from Chris. He always knows right where to interject something. I love it.
Well done, sir.
By the way, speaking of awesome moms, we got to take a quick detour because we were talking before we got started. Your mom created the Amber Alert system.
Yep.
And I was immediately terrified that you had like a younger sister or something that was abducted, because like the lady that started DARE and the lady, it all comes from some horrible experience. So I was happy to hear that your mom didn't have personal experience with a kidnapped child. But tell us how your mom in Plano, Texas, or Fort Worth, Texas, wherever you're from, creates the Amber Alert system.
Yeah, and by the way, I do have a younger sister, and much to my chagrin, she was never abducted. Kidding, love her. We're just definitely cut from different cloths. We're very different.
Shout out to my younger sister, also badass mom, and we are very much cut from different cloth.
Yeah, no. Mom invented the Amber Alert. It was her idea. Over 1,000 kids in the U.S. alone alive today because of her. Now it's in 27 countries around the world. Probably more now. I've lost count, but
amazing.
There was in Arlington, Texas. This is back in the early 90s. There was a young girl named Amber Hagerman. I think she was 7 years old, something like that, riding her bike. She just got a new bike for Christmas in front of her house and broad daylight, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Some guy pulls up, black pickup truck, and grabs her off the bike, throws her in the truck, never seen alive again, raped and murdered. Body found in a ditch a week later. And it was a heartbreaking story. It was on all the news channels because back then that wasn't that common, right? So it was, it really broke Mom's heart. It really affected her. And we didn't know the family or anything like that, but she said the saddest part of all is probably 50 people saw that truck pulling away, but didn't know what they were looking at. And if there's just some way to let people know. And she was reminded of a time when we were living in Israel. We were in an outdoor shopping area, outdoor market, and there was an American woman there, tourist, who starts freaking out. And the shop owner's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? This lady's like, what's wrong? My daughter's missing. My daughter's missing. She's like, okay, what does she look like? What is she wearing? She gives her description. The shop owner turns and says something in Hebrew to another shop owner who walks away. And the woman's like, okay, sit down, relax. We'll take care of it. He's like, no, my daughter's missing. She goes, please sit down, relax, have a coffee. How can you tell me to have a coffee? My daughter's missing. And she goes, because this is Israel. It's not America. Sit down. She's like, oh, Okay. So she sits down. When she got the description, she turned and told the other shop owner. He then went and told the next shop owner, who told the next shop owner, who told the next. And all of a sudden, like wildfire, it was spread throughout the entire shopping area. The entire market was looking for this little girl. And within 10 minutes, somebody brought her back with an ice cream cone in her hand. She just wandered off. And it really impacted Mom. She saw that it was communication. It was everybody being on the same page. That was the key. So now fast forward, this little girl's missing. Mom's got this idea and she tried to let it go. And, she had so many friends like, just let it go. You nothing you can do. And that wasn't going to fly for Mom. She's very stubborn. So the original idea was cell phones. Technology wasn't there at the time. So one of her friends says, well, what about the radio? And she goes, really? You think they do it? She goes, well, they do those emergency broadcasts, so why not? So she calls the producer for a local radio station, Mix 1029, a woman named Jennifer Grimm, and says, I want to talk about Amber Hagerman. She goes, do you have any information? Because everyone was still looking for information on the killer. She goes, no, but I have an idea. She tells her the idea. Jennifer said, I love it. Mom writes it up in a letter. Jennifer pitches the idea at the area, like the Dallas area station managers meeting or something like that. And they bring it to the Dallas Police Department and said, okay, we'll give it a shot. And I didn't find out this part till after. The first 2 Amber Alerts that went out, nothing. No response. Nobody called in. Nada. So the police chief was like, it was a great idea. It just doesn't have legs. Scrap it. And they go, come on, chief, give it one more shot. 3rd Amber Alert goes out. An infant child that had been kidnapped was returned within 45 minutes. That was the birth of the Amber Alert. So it went Dallas and Texas and then started spreading from there. And President George W. Bush actually signed the bill to make it mandatory in all 50 states. And they invited Mom to the White House for the signing of the bill. And I've still got a picture of her then. And she got there, there's all these little kids running around. She's like, oh, are these the staffers' kids? And they're like, serious? You don't know? These are all the children that are alive because of you. And she just burst into tears, like went through 2 boxes of Kleenex easily. But that was it, man. And she didn't, for a long time, she was unknown, right? And, you had every jackwagon and from every corner of the country comes like, oh, it's my idea. I created it, and trying to, get book deals and all. And like, no, because she didn't want credit. It wasn't about her. It was about the kids. So she was unknown for a long time. And then they found out who she was and invited her to the White House. And now it's gone from there. She's done a TED Talk. It's on YouTube. Because she said she wanted to speak on this. It's like, I want to tell people that one person can make a difference. I'm like, well, then let's do it. You should do a TED Talk. She's like, oh, I could never do that. But I had the contacts. I'm like, guess what? You're booked on TEDx. And she's like, what? So
that's awesome. What's your mom's name? We're going to look up this the TED Talk and link to it.
Diana. It's spelled Diana, but pronounced Deanna. Last name Simone. Simone.
Cool. We're gonna look it up, and she talks about the whole Amber Alert story.
Yeah,
and
the whole thing, how it's done,
how one person can change the world.
Yeah, shining example for me.
Man,
she's kind of my hero.
That's awesome. What a great story, man.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, this is the thing, it's like, remember going back to the mentor, we talk about the pillars of kingship, legacy. What are you leaving behind? Like, she's got it covered. Like you're done, Mom.
All set, Mom. Yeah, you peaked. You peaked.
You peaked. Yeah, it's like, don't do anything else because I'm still trying to catch up. But yeah, it's like, for me, I want to know what the ripple effect through humanity is, from the lives that were touched by the lives that were touched by the lives that were touched by the lives that I touched, right? And as a man, as a father, that's yours too. And you have a living legacy with children, right? You recognize that they're little, what'd you call them, little hard drives?
Yeah, they're little pristine hard drive. You're
imprinting everything onto them. And I tell people that with fitness, like with corporate wellness program, I've got guys that's like, I just, we during the pandemic just had a baby, 6 months old. I'm like, yeah, cool. You're 100 pounds overweight. You want a fat, lazy child, right? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, you understand, she's going to parrot whatever you do. You are her model for health. You are her model for discipline. You are her model for values. This isn't about you anymore, bro. So how are you showing up in your life that's showing her how to show up in hers? He's like, well, I didn't think about that. It's now a good time.
Yeah, now would definitely be a good time, right?
Now would be a good time.
So let's jump into the real crazy shit, because in preparation for this interview, I'm like, let me do some research, and I looked at your IMDb page, and I looked at your Twitter, and then I tried to look at you on Facebook because that's how we originally got introduced, and I'm like, oh, he's not on Facebook. That's weird. Yeah. I can't find anything on Facebook, and it turns out you were sitting in Facebook jail for speaking some truth to this COVID craziness. Yeah. So. Without going too nuts or alienating any of your potential clients or whatnot, what did you get put in Facebook jail for?
So, I put up a post encouraging people to think before subjecting their children to medical experiments, which the vaccine is. And that's not conspiracy theory. That's fact. It is an experiment. The experiment will not be done until 2023. And normally, to put a vaccine to market takes years and years and years. They rushed it for months. Normally, they would have to go through animal trials to prove it's safe and effective. They stopped doing the animal trials because the animals all fucking died. Nobody wants to admit that. They did it on ferrets. They all died. So now we are the experiment. Like, people don't get that. And there's been over 4,000 deaths as a direct result of the COVID-19 vaccines. There's been over 300,000 now adverse events, right? 200 miscarriages from pregnant mothers, heart attacks, this, that, and the other. So I'm just like, please think before subjecting your children to medical experiments, because now they're giving this to children who have almost zero chance of becoming infected or ill with this, right? 99% recovery rate from this virus in the first place. Children, 99.997. Why do we need to vaccinate children? And also, just help me out, because, I'm not the brightest crayon in the box. But if the vaccine manufacturers and the CDC say if you get vaccinated, you can still catch the COVID virus, you can still transmit the COVID virus, and you still have to wear masks and you still have to socially distance. Tell me again why I would take an experimental medication with a possible side effect of death if all that stuff is true. So I had a friend who's on the other side of the fence comment, and she goes, Russell, I try to, stay out of it and let you do you. But this is blatantly untrue that they've done no trials on children, that they haven't done any trials on children under 18. And, she posted a link from Pfizer saying, yeah, we've done trials. And I said, cool, I'll check that out. But right off the bat, I don't trust Pfizer as much as you do. I shared a picture that says, choose your vaccine wisely. Pfizer has paid over $4.8 billion in lawsuits, medical fraud, bribery, so on and so on and so forth. Johnson & Johnson's done this, asked her to get. So as soon as I posted that picture, Facebook goes, boom, you're blocked for 24 hours because you violated our community standards. So I'm like, wow. And then they weren't happy enough with that. So they went digging and pulled a picture, a meme from November that I posted that is it's a meme of a gate in a front yard with no fence around it. And it says, this is a perfect example of how masks work. And they said, this violates our community standards too. 3 days, you're blocked. Okay.
So coincidentally, my valiant assistant Chris here lives with his two elderly parents, and they're concerned. So he decided, well, fuck it, I'm going to get the vaccine. And he travels a lot to Mexico, and he's very worried that the airplanes are going to eventually not work for anybody that doesn't have a vaccine. So he decided to do it. And then they give you this 1, 2, 3, 4, double-sided 5, 6-page document, basically on all of the reasons you shouldn't do it, and that it's experimental and that it hasn't been approved by the FDA yet, and it's on emergency authorization, and you can't sue the creator of the drug if something goes wrong. And for anybody who has ever had the misery of watching daytime TV, you know that all the commercials on daytime TV are, have you been wronged by this drug? Have you had adverse effects from this drug? Sign up for this class action lawsuit where we're going to sue the manufacturer. And the fact that the manufacturers for this particular drug are now exempt, that kind of worries me.
As well it should. Any critical thinker. Like if it's really proven safe and effective, which by the way, it is neither proven nor safe and effective, right? Because it's not approved by the FDA. It's under emergency medical use only, which is why they have to keep the lockdown and the whole charade going. Another story.
We'll get there.
Yeah. But if this is safe and effective, why are they indemnified from any liability whatsoever? No matter what happens, you can't come after them. So if I come to you and I go, yo, Scott, you want to try my experimental health drink? I've never made it before. I can't tell you what's in it. And if you get sick or die, you can't sue me or come after me in any way, shape, or form. Here.
I would tell you, eat a dick.
A bag of dicks, I would think.
Right.
Right?
A whole bag of giant dicks.
It's just if I copy word for word what's in that document and post it on Facebook, I'll be put in Facebook jail.
Right.
Even though a printed document was handed to me at a hospital. But if I put what's in that on Facebook, suddenly I'm like saying something bad.
Against standards, yeah. You're creating turmoil.
So we have to ask ourselves as intelligent human beings, as critical thinkers, what's the agenda here? Why are they pushing so hard for you to take a vaccine? Like, what's really in this? And I'm not claiming to know all of the answers, but why?
But you should at least be able to ask the question.
Yeah, that's just it. Why are they pushing so hard, right? And now you've got stories, and again, we go deep down the rabbit hole. The people that are producing the vaccine, you look at Bill and Melinda Gates, these are eugenicists, right? His father's Planned Parenthood. That's a eugenics operation. Why are Planned Parenthoods in minority, low-income neighborhoods?
Oh, yeah. I lost a friend to this argument, by the way.
I'm not even arguing. I'm just asking why.
No, I lost a friend to the Planned Parenthood argument. So I'll make a note to circle back around to this.
If they're known eugenicists, right? And Bill Gates is on video in a TED Talk saying the world is overpopulated, but with a good vaccine program and I think he said Planned Parenthood or reproductive control, we can reduce that by 10 to 15%. Wait, I'm sorry, what? What did you just say? The world is overpopulated, but with a good vaccine program, we can reduce that by 10 or 15%. And now you guys want to take this vaccine that he has mass produced. I'm just saying, let's think about this. Let's think about what's really going on here. And people go, well, you're not a doctor. Newsflash, Sparky, neither's Bill Gates.
Yeah.
Like,
Bill Gates is a college dropout just like me.
Right.
See, we're like the same person. He just has a few zeros, a few hundred extra zeros in his checking account. It's fine.
Exactly. So I'm just like, there's a lot of, as a friend of mine said, there is a high level of fuckery going on here. There's something that's just not adding up. And I didn't start on the conspiracy theory train. I'm just going, wait a minute, something's not adding up here. Like, why is the whole world shutting down over this? Remember in the beginning we saw bodies dropping in the street in China?
Yeah.
Where are they at?
Right. No,
where'd they go?
Dude, they're back to raves. There was a picture about 6 months ago of and Chris, you're gonna have to bring this up. There was like a pool club in Wuhan where it's like everybody's out at some massive rave. And I mean, there's thousands of people cheek to cheek in a hot, sweaty pool hot tub, listening to a DJ. And I'm like, oh, they know something we don't know. Because for those of you that don't know, the Chinese government, pretty fucking strict, pretty totalitarian. And the fact that they allowed several thousand people to hit up some pool party, they know something we don't know.
They were celebrating their victory over America.
So true. And I got to hit this just for the people that are rolling their eyes and think we're both idiots, which is fine. A buddy of mine called me out on this, and he's like, "But Scott, you're a libertarian, and I've been hearing for years, for decades, that libertarians don't really believe in the FDA to begin with, and that if somebody's dying of cancer, they should be able to take any experimental drug they want, off-label drug." And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely. I think the FDA process is too long. I think it prevents life-saving drugs from coming to market." But if we're comparing somebody who's in the hospital on their last leg dying of cancer and they're like, "Hey man, doc, just give me a shot. Give me some experimental shit. Fly some weird shit in from South America."
Right.
Go for it. That person's got a death sentence anyways. My children, which you can look this up, there's not a single person in California, I don't know about other states, I've only looked at the California data, not a single person in California under 18-year-old that has died from COVID, period.
Right.
End of story.
Right.
And the couple that have died from like 18 to 25, it's because they had pre-existing conditions. They had a bout with cancer. They had already had type 2 diabetes and they were 400 pounds overweight. There's just so many comorbidities that I'm looking at, if my kid's got a 99.99999% survival rate,
right.
Well, I hate to admit this as a parent who's trying to be responsible. I still sometimes text and drive when my kids are in the car. That's way more likely I'm going to kill them that way than it is from them getting COVID. So yeah, my kids are all vaccinated. I'm pro-vaccine. I don't want to see any child die of polio or whooping cough or any of these crazy things you get vaccinated for as a kid. But those have been around for 30, 40 years. They've been tested. They don't prove autism, or they don't, it's been proven that they don't cause autism. This thing that was like rushed to market in 8 months. And it's so crazy to me because the same people that are the loudest about getting vaccines also were the people that were loudest about Trump being some Nazi, horrible, fascist leader. And I'm like, well, these two things can't be true at the same time. You can't think Trump was the second coming of Hitler, fascist leader, and you want to take this experimental drug that he basically spearheaded. Right. Like those two things those two things can't be in the same Venn diagram. Yeah. Like, what the fuck?
It was an evil, bad drug when Trump was suggesting it, but now that Biden's suggesting it, it's a miracle.
Yes. Like everything else in the country. And look, I didn't vote for Trump either time. Like, I'm not a huge Trump supporter. I voted for the libertarian candidates both times, even though I know it was a wasted vote. But people, that's not how it works. I didn't waste my vote. So I'm not a huge Trump guy. I am more conservative than I am progressive. But yeah, just the double talk is just crazy to me.
Right. And you talk about the FDA, the conversation you had with your friend. Yes, the FDA is a corrupt organization. The only reason I use that is I personally wouldn't give a shit if the FDA approved it or not. I don't trust the FDA any more than, the pharmaceutical companies. But I use that as a reference because everybody else thinks that's the Holy Grail. The CDC is a corrupt organization. It's not a government organization. It's a business which, by the way, has patents on vaccines and in fact is, holding stock for some of the vaccine manufacturers. Could that be a conflict of interest? Maybe, possibly. I think so. But the analogy your friend gives, like if somebody's on, has cancer, they're on death's doorstep and they should have the right to take an experimental medicine. Yeah, I agree with you. Yes, they should have the right. They should not be mandated to take it. That's the difference. Like, you should have the right to do whatever you want. If you want to shove a cucumber in your ass and do radiation, like, I don't care. Do whatever you want. It's your body. Do what you want if you think that's going to help you. But you can't tell me that I must take it and my family must take it and we all have to take this experimental medicine or else. That's the problem. Because I'm going, why do you want me to take that medicine so bad? Over a virus with a 99% recovery rate. I am healthy. They've already come out and said asymptomatic transfer is bullshit. So why would I need to do that? And before, the masks were not to protect you, they were to protect other people. But now vaccinated people don't have to wear masks and non-vaccinated people have to wear masks to protect the vaccinated. What kind of bizarro world are we living in?
Yeah.
Like, none of it makes sense. And this is the thing. I just don't think people are waking up enough to ask these questions. I'm not trying to come up on some anti-government, anti-vaccine conspiracy platform. I'm just going, some of the stuff doesn't make sense. Please be critical thinkers and ask yourself why. And there's so many examples of this going wrong. Like I said, over 4,000 people died. The health director of India said, enough with this, and I'm not going to do an Indian accent. It would be offensive, although it would be pretty good because I still have the acting background. However, he's like, enough with all this nonsense. People are afraid to take this. I'm going to do this and prove once and for all it's safe. He died 24 hours later.
Shut the fuck up.
24 hours later, he's dead.
You're kidding, right?
No, look it up.
I'm going to. Who is this? The
health director of India.
Oh man, Chris, we got to link to that for sure. Because I believe you. Nothing that you've said yet has felt false to me. This one I'm going to have to fact check.
Because we haven't hit the Guinness yet.
Yeah. Oh, we should pull one of those out. All right. All right, sweet. So we switched over to Guinness. You know, it's so funny. Guinness intimidated me for a really long time because it's so like thick and dark. And I was used to, like you mentioned earlier, you know, drinking Coors Light in the Army, that like all my buddies would drink these really dark, hefty beers. And I'd be like, ooh, I'm not man enough to drink that. And then one time I drank a Guinness, I'm like, oh, it's pretty good. It's just a little darker. Right? I'm into that. So it's like the most calories you've consumed in a liquid in 10 years. Cheers, man.
Sláinte.
Sláinte? What's that from?
That's Gaelic.
Okay.
A lot of people don't know that Guinness only has 4.2% alcohol, which is lower than Corona Light.
Oh, sweet.
I did not know that.
Well, there we go. We're saving some calories and some alcohol.
Here's another pub fight story. So drinking with a bunch of Scots. I think we were drinking shots. We were drinking something stupid, but we're well into it, and we go to toast, and Alba Gabra, which is Gaelic for Scotland forever. And for some drunken reason, my tongue goes Erin Gabra, which is Ireland forever. I'm like, fuck. What did you say?
They don't really like each other, do they?
Well, they kind of do. It's like a mutual respect. Like they don't like the English for sure, right? Like there's a flower in England called Sweet William, named after Prince William, and the Scots called the same flower Stinking Billy.
Nice.
They fucking hate him.
I need to spend more time in Europe. Like I've been to Spain, I've been to London, but I just feel like I need to hit that Ireland, Scotland, basically see all the places that Braveheart were filmed and like all these great Viking shows. Cause I'm like, I need to see what that was all all So
yeah, dude, it's amazing.
Nice. Tell us a little bit more about your travels, man. Like I feel like I started the episode saying you're the most interesting man ever, most interesting man in the world.
Now almost 2 hours in, it's like, he's not that interesting.
Yeah, no, still pretty interesting, by the way. What about travels, man? Where else have you been, or what excites you about? Hey, maybe maybe the government will let us travel again soon. What's going to excite you about traveling, or where have you been that you want to go back to?
Yeah, click your heels together 3 times on that one, Dorothy.
Yeah.
I don't think that's happening. Scotland is definitely one of my favorite places on the planet. It was beautiful. You know, we took the rail or the train up from London straight through, and it's just gorgeous. These green rolling hills, and you know, in Scotland, you can find these little fishing villages that you'd swear time skipped over for 100 years. Like, it's just gorgeous, you know, and good people. Canada was beautiful. British Columbia, beautiful. Thailand was cool. Would not live there. Although you could live like a king for like $5,000 for a month. You could live well in Thailand.
Yeah.
Been to Mexico, but I didn't bring home a wife like you did.
Yes.
So, you know, you win on that one. Israel, Utah. Where else have I been?
Hey, talk a little bit about Israel, because like you actually lived there, and I feel like I had this amazing adventure in Israel where a buddy of mine who was in special forces, he was a Green Beret. He was taking a 2-year hiatus from the Green Beret. I swear he's going to work for the CIA one day, because the military paid for him to go get a 2-year master's degree. He was a West Point grad in basically kind of like psychological warfare meets urban planning meets like guerrilla conflict. It's the weirdest degree you've ever heard of, only offered in Israel, of course.
Cool.
Yeah. So I got to go visit him for a few weeks, and we toured all of Israel, and he had diplomatic IDs. So it's like when you're driving into the West Bank, when you're driving into Bethlehem, which is actually under Palestinian or Muslim rule, you know, he would just flash this card straight to the front of the line everywhere. Like I can never go there as a tourist again, because it was the most baller experience. But I know a lot of people in America that have never been to Israel, never been to the Middle East, don't really know any Israelis, don't know anybody from Palestine, haven't read anything about the history, but are really opinionated on one side or the other.
Isn't that funny?
Isn't it funny? Us Americans, we speak one language. We've never left America, but we have opinions on everything. Yeah. So what was your experience in there, and what insight, if any, can you bring to our current situation where Hamas is bombing them, they're shooting back? It's always Israel's fault. What kind of on the ground experience growing up there did you have?
You know, I was a little bit separated because we were at an American international school, right? And we had all the diplomats' kids, but still, we had Palestinian friends, and they're good people. But I want to clarify, when I say the Palestinians are good people, I'm not talking about Hamas. right? There's a difference. And I've seen Palestinians speak out and go, they don't represent us, right? They're playing a game, right? And it's for power. It's not to represent the people, but that's typical of most governments. Everyone's, we're in a weird situation right now where they're blaming Israel, which you don't see that much. Usually Israel's the victim, all these horrible things, but Israel's done some horrible shit too. And, when I was over there, I saw Israeli soldiers beat up an American woman, a journalist, took her camera and smashed it on the ground because she was filming what they were doing in Palestine. Does that mean that Israel is the bad guy? Absolutely not. I don't even pretend to know enough about the current situation in Israel with Hamas to form an opinion on it. And I've had people ask me to jump on both sides. I don't know enough. Excuse me. It's, do you ever watch Game of Thrones?
Yeah, okay. Loved it.
So we are, and
you look like you could have acted in that show, by the way. You got that look. You could have been somebody kingly. So I just want to give you that compliment.
Appreciate that.
Game of Thrones was pretty awesome.
I would have been happy with that. But same thing with politics here in America. Like is Trump the bad guy? Is Biden the bad? Look, here's the deal. We're the peasants in the village down below trying to figure out what Cersei Lannister is doing in Castle Lannister. Like, no chance that we're going to know the inner workings of her mind. We don't have access to that level of information, period. There is fuckery and deception going on every level of government and politics, period. Israel has done fuckery and deception. Hamas, fuckery and deception. It's all a mess. And you've got, I feel, this is opinion, you've got good people on both sides that really want peace. And they're not going to have it as long as power is a bigger grab. It's organizations for these governments. So it's a mess over there right now. I don't know who threw the first stone. I don't know. Like in truth, the Jews and the Arabs have been cutting each other's throats since biblical times. So I don't know what the answer to peace is over there. I don't like seeing good people and innocent civilians being victimized, whether it's the Israeli doing it to Palestinian families or whether it's Palestinian terrorists doing it to Israeli civilians. It's wrong. It's wrong. And I don't know, with what we've got going, like over here, what we're being fed over here. This is the thing. Everybody's perception is being fed by the mainstream media, which we know are liars. It's a propaganda machine. You think you're getting news? Come on.
No, the news faded into the realm of entertainment long ago,
right? You got, what's the stats on it? You got however many news stations, radio station, magazine, newspaper, it's like thousands and hundreds and whatever. And they're owned by six companies. I'm sorry, 6 companies, I believe 3 families. So
it's maybe a problem.
You think you're getting the news, or you think you're getting exactly what they want you to know, what they want you to believe, what they want you are being spoon-fed everything.
Yeah. I love when Jeff Bezos bought the Washington. Can you look up the newspaper that Bezos bought, Chris? It was either Washington Post.
It's the Washington Post.
The Washington Post, yeah. Jeff Bezos, the most tech-forward guy in the world, buys a fucking newspaper, which is the most antiquated technology in the news. Everybody's like, oh, he's just a purveyor of great news. He wants to keep tradition. It's like, no, he wants news stories to be spun the way that will help Amazon and help them in their lobbying efforts and scare the shit out of politicians. Like, oh, really? You want to go up against Amazon? Well, guess who's going to have negative news stories dredged up on them every day up until election cycle? It's like, give me a break, people. You can't connect the dots here.
Right.
It's all propaganda, both sides, and I swear to God, I blame Rush Limbaugh because, when Rush Limbaugh spoke prior to his death, I probably agree with his politics a little bit more than I agree with Rachel Maddow. But everybody realized after Rush Limbaugh, it's like, wait a minute, I can make $40,000 to $100,000 a year as a journalist or I can make millions of dollars a year as an entertainer, which is what Rush Limbaugh was.
Right.
Well, forget about reporting the news. I want to be part of the news.
Right.
And I get it because everybody has their own self-interest at heart. If you tell me like, hey, Scott, you can do this really hard hit piece or this really hard hitting piece, you're going to go research in the field for about, 6 months, and you're going to go live with Hamas and maybe get your head fucking blown off so you can get a real journalistic story with integrity. And if you're really lucky and the story really lands, you're going to make $12,000. Or you can get on the news and spout your opinion so that we all live in the same echo chamber and you tell people exactly what they want to hear. And we'll sign you a contract for $4.6 million for 3 years to have your own daytime television show. It's like, yeah, I'm picking the latter.
Yeah.
I don't want to go get embedded with Hamas to write a great article. I want to like talk some shit and make $3 million.
Yeah. Journalistic integrity. What is that?
Yeah.
It doesn't exist anymore.
Pretty much an oxymoron, right?
Yeah. Are you familiar with James O'Keefe and Project Veritas?
A little bit. I haven't followed a lot of their stuff because I'm a little worried that the good work they're doing is getting overshadowed by some of their tactics. But yeah, I've seen some of their videos where I'm like, oh, these guys are getting like journalistic news that should be front page, and it just gets buried on, the inner workings of my Facebook with 2 views.
Yeah, you have to go looking for it. But yeah, they've blown the lid off politicians and journalists. Over and over and over again. They just did an expose on CNN where you got one of the top editors or producers saying, yeah, the Trump thing was all propaganda. Our mission was to bring down Trump, and fear sells. So yeah, the COVID thing, why do you think we have the death toll ticker at the bottom of the screen? We wish the number was higher because it gets it's all about the ratings. So literally CNN admitting that all the attack against Trump was propaganda. All the stuff, the dossier, it's all bullshit. All of it was bullshit, and everything they're doing to spin the story of the propaganda and make it, of the pandemic and make it worse and worse. And it's the bubonic plague, everybody's dying. All propaganda, all with an end in mind, which is either their ratings or the agenda. Like they're admitting it, and people still go, well, if it's not on CNN, it's not verified.
Oh my God, that was a good accent, by the way. That was a good W. Bush Texan. You pulled that out.
I think it's more Hank Hill. A provider of propane and propane accessories.
Oh man! All right, I got 2 questions I'd love to ask to close this out. One is a question. I was at a coaching retreat the other day, and this gentleman, John Vroman, who I'm going to introduce you to for the Front Row Dads podcast, he's world class at crafting questions, and he used to work for Tony Robbins. And so what we did was we did this little paired interview where we could go deep really fast with somebody else that's walking a mile in our shoes in our business. And he and I sat at breakfast for a couple hours and we crafted these 10 questions that they could ask each other. And the question that landed the best with all these coaching clients who are really trying to go deep, and there's this old saying that every business problem is really just a personal problem in disguise, which I think with the work that you do with men, you can probably relate. And so we asked this question. We were like, hey, where in your life are you currently flirting with disaster? And so that's my new favorite question to ask. And it might translate into business. That might be a good business conversation, might be a good personal conversation. And I won't violate the sacred trust of our coaching group and share anything. But I'll tell you asked a bunch of top producing men and women, like, where in your life are you flirting disaster? Even at surface level, at social media level, at the business numbers, everything's going really well. You get some really deep answers and some deep conversations. So, not that anybody's listening to my podcast, so you don't have to worry. But where in your life are you flirting with disaster?
Well, as long as your wife, kids, and your Uncle Jeb don't hold this against me, because that's your audience.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
That's a great question, by the way. I like that. There's 2 areas where I'm flirting with disaster. One is in my perception. One is in the potential of becoming a full-on tinfoil hat wearing prepper, because I see the writing on the wall and it scares the shit out of me about what's really coming. What the agenda, Agenda 21, like it's 2021, like it's all right there. Like the New World Order is not a conspiracy theory. Like there are literally evil forces at play that seek to enslave humanity. That scares the shit out of me. So there's part of me that wants to just pretend like everything's normal, and another part that wants to go full Red Dawn.
Right.
That's the part that's flirting with disaster. I'm like, let's go. It's because making that call, you can't do it too soon.
Right.
or you're the guy that gets locked up.
Right.
And I hope that it never comes to that. I hope it's not true. I really do. And I'm willing to fight and die for my family and for humanity and values and for my country. Not the corporation of the United States, but the concept that this country was founded on. If that's what it takes, I'd rather, what's the saying? Better to die a free man than live a slave.
Yeah.
And so there's that. But more immediate, the other place in my life where I'm flirting with disaster, which is complacency. And I think that's where a lot of people flirt with disaster. Whether that's been programmed into us and, that's the seed of the soy boy. But complacency and comfort are killers of dreams. And to believe that I've got all the time in the world, I can do it tomorrow. It's like procrastination and complacency. And it's like, and if I'm living in mission, nothing could stop me. But if I go, well, I mean, who am I? Who really wants to listen? And I'm just going to eat for comfort and nobody really wants to hear what I have to say. And all that bullshit, that's flirting with disaster. Because to me, the worst possible thing that could happen is to die with my potential still inside of me. Who was it? Les Brown or somebody else said the most wealthy real estate in the world is the graveyard, because that's where so many dreams, so many books that were never written, so many movies that never, like all of everybody's potential and dreams and all that stuff that they could have done died with them there. That's flirting with disaster.
So give us a hit list. Give us a hit list of the few things that are still on Russell's agenda as far as making impact, growing the business, writing the book. I don't know. Maybe you're not an actor anymore, but you still go to Starbucks and write your screenplay like everybody else in LA. Like what's on the hit list?
I don't go to Starbucks. I do have a screenplay.
Of course, we're in LA. Everybody has a screenplay.
Yeah. And actually, I would like to see that one come to fruition. If you took Dexter, True Blood, add a dash of Wonder Woman, throw it in a blender, you'd get a taste of what this will be like.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I got the dirtiest look one time because I went to a coffee shop, some super little hipster coffee shop in Highland Park or something. And like, I wanted an iced tea, and of course it was like $17. And so then I hadn't had lunch, so I also got like the $13 vegan cookie or whatever. It's like $32 for an iced tea and a cookie. And I swear I was standing there at the counter, and it took them 17 minutes to make my iced tea. So I'm just looking down the row of tables, and it's like MacBook, man bun. I don't know what I was looking at, man bun. And I just looked at the guy and I was like, hey man, is it going to be okay me buying an iced tea here? And he's like, excuse me? And I'm like, yeah, like I'm not writing a screenplay or anything. And it just so happened that like it was in between songs right when I said that. And I said it a little loud. I was like, yeah, like I'm not writing a screen. And I got like 10 of the dirtiest looks you've ever seen in your entire life. I'm like, no, it's cool guys. I'm going back to work. Like you guys keep writing for Netflix. And then I got my iced tea and I ran quickly because I was scared the knife was going to come out. So
I believe that was at Intelligentsia.
That was at Intelligentsia. Yes, that's exactly where it was.
That's exactly where it should be.
Yeah. Cool. So that's a great answer to that question, by the way. Complacency is where we can all be flirting with disaster.
Yeah.
And then what's the my last question? What's the question you wish everybody would ask you when you do these kind of things? I know you're pretty outspoken in social media, and you're building this brand obviously for the group that you're working with. But what's the question? And then we can go anywhere with this, that you wish people would ask you.
What's your mission?
Oh, that's a really good question. We're going to have to add that, Chris, to the closing questions.
Yeah.
All right, man. So what's Russell's mission?
To empower people. When I think about everything I do, from the self-defense to the men's work to the life coaching to the fitness training, it's all about empowering people, right? I want to empower people to be like I spent so many years under the boot of not good enough, under that bullshit false belief, thinking that there was something inherently wrong with me. It wasn't. And as long as I believed that, though, there was, right? Because I was going to make it a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I want to help people escape that. I want to help people step into their fullest potential, whatever that may be for them. And I want to help them have the sovereignty and the power to fucking do that. So self-defense, we talk about there's no order without sovereignty. How can you be your fullest potential if you don't even have sovereignty over your own body? Right? Which is something we're looking at right now. It's like, who the hell are you to tell me what I have to put in my body and what I have to take? No, I have sovereignty. I have personal sovereignty, meaning I am the king of my castle. I run this shit, right? And I want to help people step into the fullness of whatever it is for them that literally brings fulfillment. Tony Robbins talks about 6 human needs, right? That regardless of culture, continent, or language, we all have these same 6 human needs. And they're not wants, they're not like to have, their fucking needs, right? The first is certainty. And that could be comfort or security. We have to have some level of it in our lives, whether it's money in the bank, a roof over our heads, whatever it is. The second is uncertainty or variety. He says because God has a sense of humor. But it's really because if we knew what every moment of every day was going to be like, it'd be Groundhog's Day. We'd be bored out of our fucking minds, right? So variety is the spice of life, right? So we have to have variety. The third is significance, right? Which is huge because people will live and die for significance, right? The need to feel special, worthy of love or attention, whatever it is. The fourth is love and connection. And it's funny, those are grouped together because they're not the same thing. People want love, they'll settle for connection. You see it all the time. Bad relationships. Or as Chris Rock said, 2 crackheads will stay together forever. Right? And misery loves company. That's connection, right? But the 5th and 6th needs are growth and contribution. Growth, everything is either growing or dying, right? Stagnation is an illusion. That's complacency, right? So if you think you're stagnant, if you think you're complacent, if you're just holding still, no, you're just dying slowly, motherfucker. Wake up, step up, and do something with your life. But contribution, that's fulfillment, right? That's the need of the soul. Like, what are you contributing? Like, what's going to make the world a better place because you were here? What's going to make your family better because you were here? What's going to make your life, anybody you're around, better? Like, so I want to empower people to fucking live life fully in whatever shape that is, and joyfully, and not be afraid of their own shadow or the bill collectors or the bad guy on the corner or whatever it may be. So that's my mission, to empower humanity to live fully and, and in truth and connected to some divinity or higher power or source that is beyond all the bullshit that we deal with on a day-to-day. Because I think in truth, we all come from this higher source and we're all connected. And if we could just get out of our own ways and get our shit together and stop focusing on all of our differences and instead create a synergy. But now beyond this planet, now we're beyond all the petty bullshit and the wars and the Hamas and the Israel and the vaccine. Like, if we could actually operate as one people and really for the betterment of all, this world would be amazing.
It's a mic drop, man. That's how we end a podcast.
There you go.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you being on. I think you're going to do big things with all the groups you're involved with. And I know we didn't even get into it, but the corporate health and wellness program you're pioneering, we couldn't talk too much about that because there's some contracts in the works. But when that gets finalized and or you get booted off of Facebook and this is your only way to sneak back onto Facebook, I'd love to have you back in 6 months, get an update and see where we're at as a country and see where you're at with your business.
Yeah, it'd be an honor. Hopefully we're not in Red Dawn by then.
Yeah. Make your way up here. We're in a gated community. We got a safe over here. We're good. We're good.
Perfect.
All right, man. Thanks for being on.
Dude, thank you, brother. Cool. Appreciate it.